All right, we're going to continue our study of ecology by looking at trophic cascades today. We're going to be reading Thinking Like a Mountain. This is an essay by Aldo Leopold. And today's big question is, what factors keep an ecosystem balanced and healthy? What do we know so far? Well, we know that organisms are linked to their environment by nutrient cycling and energy flux. So let's zoom in on that, right? We can see all the factors that make up an ecosystem here. All right, so the first thing that we studied in our ecology unit was nutrient cycling. And in that section, we learned that nutrients can be limiting factors and that a lot of plant species have really evolved within these limits. All right, so we saw what happens when an ecosystem becomes over-fertilized. We especially saw that with nitrogen and phosphorus when you get eutrophication. The next topic that we studied in our ecology unit was the fact that energy and nutrients enter an ecosystem through primary producers. So we started to look at these two things together. We did a diagram. This was done in class or as homework, and we saw that, right, we've got our nutrients. Those had been recycled. Okay, those were things like, right, our carbon dioxide, our oxygen, nitrogen, minerals, all of those things. Those are going to be re-entering the ecosystem through the producers, all right? But here we need solar energy. And this is where the energy is also entering the ecosystem, okay? Those things then get transferred to our next trophic level, okay? And we also saw, right, that everything dies and is going to be recycled through the process of decomposition, right? And that keeps this cycle going, plus, right, the new influx of solar energy. We can see all of this by looking at a very nice equation, right? So this is basically the equation for photosynthesis, and we learned about that last week. All right, in our ecology unit, we've seen that a bunch of things are going into an ecosystem, right? And that an ecosystem is comprised of both biotic and abiotic factors. All right, so we've studied this before, right? We know that physical, chemical, and biological processes cannot be separated, especially if we're talking about the biosphere. All right, so, right, we can see that very clearly coming together in an ecosystem. We have our living components that are very crucial, and we have our non-living components also very crucial, okay? So all of these things are going to play a role in the health of an ecosystem. Another concept that we learned was net primary productivity. And looking at our equation again, right, the equation for photosynthesis, that's really gross primary production. What we're interested in, right, is net primary production. And that's gross primary production minus the energy used by producers. And this is what's going to be available to everything else in an ecosystem. So we can look at net primary production through this diagram, right? Some of the energy that the plants are making go to the plant itself, and this is what's available to everything else in the ecosystem. Great, so we also know that only 10% of that energy is making it to the next trophic level. And we created some beautiful trophic pyramids on Friday to illustrate this point. Great, we know a lot. We know a lot about ecology. Okay, let's get back to our big question. What are the factors that are keeping an ecosystem balanced and healthy? Right? We already know all of those influence that physical and chemical abiotic factors are having. Those are what are called bottom-up controls of primary productivity. And we already saw what nutrients like nitrogen can do to that. They increase primary productivity. What we haven't seen are the top-down controls. Okay, so that's the influence that consumers are having on primary productivity. So we're going to be taking a closer look at that. And what we're going to find is that a change in one trophic level has a cascading effect on the rest of the food web. All right, awesome. So a new concept here. Okay, so looking at this diagram, we can see, right, that bottom-up influence on primary productivity, right? But we're going to be looking more closely at the top-down influences on primary productivity. All right, so these are really powerful interactions that can control entire ecosystems. And we're going to see that very clearly with a short video that we're going to be watching about Yellowstone National Park. Stay tuned.